Good to see you all here. See, some of you should be on my list, but you're not, but that's okay. All right, it's close enough. Hey, greetings, everyone. It's close to 10 o'clock here on the East Coast. My name is Chris Douglas. I want to welcome you all to our first 2022 unstated meeting of Virginia Research Lodge. It is sponsored by the Virginia Research Lodge, number 1777 of Highland Springs, Virginia. But I want to welcome you all here. Today's discussion, it's called Whence Came You? A panel discussion with English Masons. As I was explaining, for those of you who may join in while we were talking, there's Brother Elias. As we were talking, what we do here in these Zoom meetings is, it originally started out with the structure of a regular research lodge. Most of you should be familiar with what a research lodge is. If not, a research lodge is a regular blue lodge that does not raise Masons. You must be a member of a regular blue lodge, and then you can affiliate with a research lodge. We meet 4 times a year typically, and we just open and present a paper from one of our members or one of our guest speakers, and then we have a discussion. So what we did, we followed that format here, but I'm experimenting with other things, other ways of, sharing Masonic information. And one of the ones I really like is these panel discussion. I choose a topic and I invite a bunch of brothers to come in and be on our panel. It's very loosely structured. I'm going to add a couple of you to the panel who didn't know you're going to be on it today, so I'm going to ask for volunteers. But basically, I just ask questions to all of you, and I contrast and compare your grand jurisdiction with mine, which is Virginia, which I consider pretty typical of American, at least US-based Grand Lodges. So that's the plan for today.
Chupa Karachi did a brilliant lecture on service lodges, if anyone wants to look at it on YouTube.
Oh, yeah, I think I've ever seen that. All right, back on track here. Brian, how long is the process to go from an EA to Fellowcraft to Master Mason?
There is no time scale. I know in America there are sort of set times for it to a degree, but here you could be there within 3 months.
Right. Well, we do not have a wait time. It's simply like here you receive the entered apprentice. You have to learn the catechism. And by the way, do you have catechisms? That was the follow-up question. What? Do you have to stand a proficiency to get the next degree? Okay. We have a catechism, which I think most of you may be familiar with, I don't know. But basically, you have to memorize a series of questions and answers and your obligation and show that you know all the signs and grips and all. So you get your EA, you have to learn the AA catechism before you come back and get the Fellowcraft. You then have to learn the Fellowcraft catechism before you come back and get the Master Masons. And then you're expected to learn the Master Masons catechism. There's no penalty if you don't, but you get a nice, pretty certificate if you do. And we encourage everyone, pretty much if you're going to be an officer, we're going to lean on you pretty heavily. Say, no, you need to get your Master Masons catechism out of the way because you've got to learn all that work anyway. You might as well do it. But it's a matter of how quickly you can turn around. I'm not to brag, but, well, brag a little. I was in a hurry to go to Japan. I was in the Marines, and I petitioned my lodge in August, and they didn't get around to voting on me until December. And then they didn't do any work in December, so they initiated me in January. I had orders to leave for Okinawa in February. So I said, well, I got to get through this as quick as possible. I was able to get initiated. 2 weeks later, stand my proficiency, got my Fellowcraft. A week later, came back to my proficiency, got my Master Masons. A week later, left for Japan. So I was in a hurry.
I need to modify my answer slightly then. In that, yes, we do get asked questions from the from the first to the second, but there's a deacon stand beside you who will prompt you if you don't get them right. So it's not a case of if you don't get the answers right, you don't progress. You're guaranteed progress.
But you're supposed to memorize them or try to.
Theoretically, yeah.
Okay. But so in our case,
may I come in?
Yeah, please go ahead.
In the District College of Nigeria here, English, we recently introduced this extra proficiency that candidates need to present. After your initiation, you learn the questions, of course, questions and answers. And then to move from the first to the second degree, a candidate needs to present, yeah, we call it proficiency. It's more like a short lecture where you share your experience in the first degree. After, what did you feel before the degree, before your initiation, throughout the period of the initiation, from the preparation by the Tyler to the end of these different stages in the initiation process. What did you learn from each stage, and how have you applied it to your life? So you have to make a presentation on that for the first degree. Then to move from the second to the third degree, you also give a talk in addition to the Q&A.
Okay.
Yeah. That we now do. It was not part of it. It was not part of the practice before now, but in the last 2 years, this has been introduced and it is working. It is a way of encouraging brethren to learn more about the institution, beyond just the 11 Q&A for the first degree, and I think 8, 9, 10 for the second degree.
Okay, very good.
It's been very useful.
Okay. Neil, are there lectures for each degree?
There are lectures for each degree. However, we don't, well, in my lodge anyway, we don't normally go through them regularly. So they're there for you to read, to gain your own knowledge. But specifically in the first, second and third degree, we do the ritualistic bits, what we absolutely have to do, but we don't extend the meeting by giving the lectures.
Okay. It for the rest of y'all, is that basically true? Is that something did you used to have? Because we have the 3 required lectures, and they have to be given that night. Is that typical, or is that gone away some, or what?
First, second, and 3 degree charges each given on that when you're initiated normally. So you have to, and normally if somebody hasn't, let's say, haven't had that first degree charge, they are obliged to they will get it at some stage at a later date. But normally in the first degree, you get first degree charge towards the end of the ceremony. The ditto. Also, however, the tracing board, normally we don't do the first degree tracing board, but we will do the second degree tracing board and that's quite a thing up here.
Okay.
And that's beautiful.
And traditional history and maybe working tools, that might be part of.
Yeah, that's basically what we would do as well, same as what Boris and Alistair said.
Okay, you do have that. Oh yeah, because the tracing boards definitely, for those who are, I think most of us are, I always feel like, I assume everybody knows what I know, but then again, people may not, I don't know. But the tracing boards are a way of what we have the lectures, and we do have slides now we can project and show you the slides and show you close up of the 47th problem of Euclid and such, so you see what we're talking about. But the tracing board is a way of, it's how you walk through the lecture. You have a tracing board here. Boris has one. I don't know how to make one person. Hang on, excuse me. Brian's mute. I don't know why Brian has the. I don't know why Brian has the focus. I was trying to put Boris as the focus. There we go. Oh, there we go. Boris, go ahead. You had one to show up.
No, actually, it's a part of emulation ritual.
Yeah, very similar.
And we have 3 of them inside, but
okay.
They are not explicitly explained as you are describing them. I'm familiar. Right. Continental.
Okay,
Mason.
so the tracing board lets you. The lecturer can point to the tracing board. It can either be, at one time it was drawn on the ground in the dirt or whatever, or you actually had a painted thing. You could have a rug that you roll out. You could actually have something hanging on the wall. But the point is, a lecturer can point to the tracing board and show each of the different symbols and what they mean. So that was the original custom that's kind of gone by the wayside in most places. Like I said, here in the US, we're all modern and stuff. And it used to be, we have some cheap some ancient projectors that we would use that you'd have to figure out how to keep them running. A lot of lodges now have a laptop and they'll have a projector and the project on a wall, so it's easier to see. But that's kind of the typical is to have
Usually,
the slides, as we call them, that you can reference to as part of the lecture.
in England,
All right.
if you had
Sorry,
your opened, let's say opened a lodge in a first degree, you would have the tracing board would be out for that appropriate degree. So
Right.
normally it's stacked up, and then you'd either turn it round, or some lodges will have them on a wall hidden behind a curtain. So when we went into, say, the third degree, you'd pull that curtain back to reveal that tracing board, and we still work tracing boards. Now, originally, tracing boards, for those that know, originally were effectively like a box of sand. The master mason would then sketch out in the sand what he wanted the workers to do. Because back in the day, most of these people were not literate. So
Right.
it meant, say, right, okay, I want you to do a square, this, this. And
Right.
then people go, yeah, I know what you want. And it was just, or no, that's crap, or yes, I want on a. And effectively, that was on the basis of, because numeracy and literacy rates were pretty terrible back in Europe in the 10th, 11th, 12th century.
And we did have, again, I want to plug one of our previous stated meetings. We did have an excellent talk given by a brother on the tracing boards. And he talked about the history of them and their symbolism and all that. It was really neat. There was some beautiful artwork and some seriously like impressionist, kind of almost Salvador Dali style of paintings. It's like, well, I recognize some of the symbols, but the square melting off the edge of a table, and I don't know, kind of some pretty more modern looking things. Okay, let's see who was next. Alistair, what are the dues in your lodge typically?
In a normal craft lodge, you pay it in one lump sum. You pay your lodge to Grand Lodge, lodge provincial Grand Lodge, and also the running cost of the lodge. So normally you'd get like a lump sum which you have to pay each year, and then
What's typical?
then pay.
Just how much?
I'm trying to think. I think about 150, 160, can up go to 200, but it depends on how on the building it varies, but certainly also depends on how many times you meet in a year,
right?
And which lodge, and also where you're located. London lodges can be far more expensive. I've heard of like a London lodge being 285 for 4 meetings, that includes your meals. Up here, it's far less than that. It's about 200. That doesn't include the meals.
200 pounds. 200 pounds. So that's
yes.
How much US?
But also as well, some lodges will include the dining fees in that, others won't.
Right. Okay.
Most of the lodges I belong to, they'll have a dining list, and you pay for your lodges, you pay for your meal as and when you dine, or you pay it on these days. A lot of people just pay it, say, yes, I'm attending. There's meal money paid back by backs, and that's it. Job done.
Okay.
Which
interesting. So you say 200 pounds. That's what? How much US?
I don't know what the exchange rate is at the moment. I'm afraid.
I'm just looking for a ballpark. Huh?
Times 1.4, roughly.
According to Alexa, it's 274.
Okay, so up to $300 roughly. Okay, I'll say by comparison, Ocean View I think is typical. I think we're up to like 145. And you mentioned the provisional lodge and all that. Likewise, we have Grand Lodge assessments that every lodge has to pay. I think I've been a life member since '96, so I don't worry about it anymore. It was one of the best investments I ever had because at the time dues were $55. Now they're up to like $145. And Grand Lodge, I think, gets $45 out of that every year. At the time, it was probably like 20 or 25. So life membership was a definite deal for us, where I pay once 16 times the dues and I don't ever pay again. Okay, and you mentioned other costs. So you did mention like paying for meals and such. So if you were to visit, Brian, we'll take you. If you were to visit another lodge, then you would pay for your meal when you attend, or is it just the members who pay, or what's typical?
It varies. There's no straight answer. If I was going as a guest of someone, then obviously I wouldn't pay. If I just showed up on my own, then I would be expected to pay.
Oh, interesting.
I normally pay sort of either at the beginning of the meeting, when you're in lodge, you pay the treasurer, or the treasurer would come around during the festive board and actually ask for the money. Either way, you would be expected to pay for your own beer and alcoholic drinks and soft drinks.
The horror. All right, wait.
Exactly.
So what would you, okay, so if you visited a lodge and you weren't a guest because, as usual, you were just rude and impertinent, you just forced yourself on a lodge, didn't want you there, how much would you pay for your meal, just the meal?
It varies. Where I am, it'd be about 10 to 12 pound. I've heard prices of up to 80, 90 pounds in London.
Wow.
So it does vary.
So well, you say 10 to 20, so like 20 pounds. If you just went out to eat, is that a decent meal at a restaurant, or is that?
No, it's not a decent meal in a restaurant.
Okay. I don't know. You may have a higher standard. I mean, you don't have McDonald's or anything over there, but
I have to defend my territory.
Go ahead, Boris.
So I have to defend my territory. Mark Master Mason Hall, 39 quid, really decent food and wine included.
Well, there you go. Thank you, Boris.
I can second that. Mark Mason's is great for food.
Okay, well, I'm trying to clarify. So, Brian, you say, so 20 pounds is typically what you pay for a meal. If you went out to eat, that would not get you a decent meal. You pay how much?
I'd expect to spend about 40, 50 quid for a decent meal if I went out. That's for more than one course, obviously.
Okay.
In the lodge, you would probably get 2 courses. If you're really lucky, you get 3. Again, in Mark Mason lodges, the meals are a lot better. And you'd possibly end up with 3 courses plus cheese and biscuits and coffee.
Okay. Well, again, it's a cultural thing, and I'm trying to relate. If I go to my lodge and it's just a regular meeting, at the annual, no one pays at the annual. The lodge ponies up the money. We have a decent feast at the annual. If I just went to my lodge for a regular meeting and we'd have like lasagna, or we'd have fried chicken or something, just a typical meal, and everybody chips in $5 or $10, $5 or $10. If I went out to eat, I'd pay at least, by myself, I'd pay easily $15 to $20 at any reasonable restaurant. We're not talking fancy dining, but like if I went out to a chain restaurant like an Olive Garden or a Red Lobster or something, I'm trying to relate. I don't know how much y'all can relate to what I'm saying. I pay $20 easily to feed just myself, to have a decent ribs or a steak somewhere. I might pay $25 for a decent steak, but typically $20. So I'm paying at least 4 times what I pay in my lodge. But again, if I wanted to get just a fried chicken, I could probably get for less than $10 at any fried chicken place. I could get a decent fried chicken meal, which would be comparable to what I get in my lodge that I'd only pay $5 for. Yeah. So we're basically covering the cost. We're not padding the coffers.
Things like McDonald's and that, obviously, yes, would be a lot cheaper than 20 quid, but the average meal is about 15, 20.
Okay.
That does include normally an added bit for coffers, possibly for charity, possibly to pay the caterers or whatever. We actually have caterers, and sometimes
I was going to get into that. So you don't have like a stewards committee that prepares the meals. That's not typical for y'all.
No.
Okay. Well, this is what I'm looking to get into is the differences. We have the junior ward is in charge of the meals. The stewards committee, if you have stewards, is expected to prepare the meals. And you're lucky if you break even, because everyone will be paid. Like I said, most everybody will chip in 5. Some people pay 10, but and you're lucky if you break even for the cost of the meal. But the stewards have to do the cooking and the cleaning. But you actually have them catered. So it's worth the $20 or the 20 quid for the meal, then you would say.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But Chris, I think
please.
So the other observation on that is when we're having festive boards, post meeting, they're closed. So being able to find a venue that can host 40 or 30 people and dine, it can be challenging.
Right.
I don't know. Do you guys just eat at the lodge? Centre where you meet.
We have our own refectory, yeah.
Yeah. We eat at our lodge room. Go ahead, Boris.
Thank you, Brother Neil. That was my point. Basically, festive board in UK is part of the ritual, if you will. Stewards are, correct me, brethren from UK if I'm wrong, but stewards are usually pouring the wine for wine taking and toasts. So they are not cooking, fortunately.
Well, usually we up in-house, normally the buildings. Most buildings in York have their own in-house catering, one of the outskirts, but normally we have catering facilities and our own. Stewards will normally go and fetch wine if people want it.
Okay.
They'll also do the roll as well. That's when they're jobs. So, well, when we have a very big meeting and we have to put nameplates out, it's not a big thing putting out nameplates these days. It's such a time-consuming job because obviously people work, so they arrive, and it's normally do the business downstairs. But again, for instance, in terms of we'll check charity money in a pot, which will be passed around, and people put money in, and as well as, and obviously some lodges do raffles, some don't. Ditto chapters and things, which is quite fun.
I wanted to thank Neil, but Neil's already left. Brother Boris Alexov, I'm sorry, you were on my panel, but you joined late, so I didn't get to acknowledge you, but I appreciate you jumping in and answering questions. So I was just looking over here. It's like, oh, Boris is answering questions. Let me count him as a panelist. And he was a panelist. He just got here late. So I didn't have you when I started. We only had 2 or 3. We had to drag Alistair in, and he's been very good at filling in. We appreciate it. I want to thank all of my panelists. We're going to keep going for a bit, but we're already at 11:45. People are dropping off. If y'all tell me you want to stop, we'll stop. But I'm enjoying this, and I'm recording it. So if it's 2 hours, I don't care. But we were at a high mark of 25. I just want to call attention to that. We're down to 17. So I see people are dropping. I understand. And I want to thank everyone. Before any of the rest of you leave, I want to thank you all for coming in our panels, but I'm not stopping yet. I just want to make sure I caught that. And anybody who's been chatting with me, I have not had time while I'm hosting and trying to talk and pay attention to keep the thing going. I haven't had time to really answer any chats. So if you sent me a private message and I didn't answer, don't think I'm being rude. It's simply I can't do that many things at once. I can't host and read the chats and answer them. So if I didn't answer your question, feel free to ask it openly, and I'll probably be able to answer you. Otherwise, I'll try and message you later. But we're doing good. I'm not stopping yet. I just wanted to make sure I covered before people dropped off. But thank you, Boris, for joining us and being on our panel now. Neil has left us. Alistair, since you're out, what? Oh, wait, you were the last one. I'm sorry. Uchenna. Oh, yeah, this would be good. Uchenna, how do you dress for lodge?
Well, we put on normally white shirts, dark suits, usually black, or sometimes dark blue, bow ties for black shoes, bow ties for night, evening meetings, and then long ties for afternoon meetings.
Okay.
I think that's basically it, yeah.
And is it pretty much it's expected and everybody pretty much conforms to the dress code, or?
Exactly.
Okay. If someone showed up in I'm sorry, you're in Nigeria. I have no idea what the common clothes are out on the street there, but if someone just showed up in like overalls or showed up in like jeans and a collared shirt or even a t-shirt.
No.
They wouldn't show up, or would you let them in if they showed up?
Then you have to wait and join the festive board. If
you're not dressed, you don't even get allowed in the meetings.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Normally it's like, oh, of course we'll let them in. Brian, is it so for in England, Brian? Typically for your meetings, what's the dress code and how strictly is it enforced?
It's exactly the same as Uchenna, and it's enforced the same way as well.
Really? Okay, so that's typical then. You do not have it's coat and tie, and actually suit and tie for meetings. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Some lodges will meet in dinner jackets. Some will only meet in dinner jackets for installation, but normally some lodges will wear lounge suits. On the summons, it normally specifies what the dress code is. Military board, they will say you can wear uniform if you wish, but normally they either dinner jackets and or a dark suit and a tie. One thing which is interesting, which I know you know about, over here we have what's called a craft tie, which you wear to any meeting, but most like provinces will have their own tie, but you don't wear that if you're in another province. It's considered bad form. It's of like, however, I just want to one thing I did receive today, which it'll be interesting to see what it comes out as, is a brand new tie produced because I'm part of the LGBT plus group. Here we are. I'll just turn my camera around. Oh, that plain tie with it is got the square on with the. But essentially, the idea is, just give me a moment. I will, if you just give me 30 seconds, I will get a couple of ties out.
Basically, every side order also has its own tie as well. So you have to wear the right tie for the right degree in the right side order.
I will say, while Alistair's getting out the tie for us, in Virginia, what I got out here, there are people who show up in lodge in collared shirts and not wear coat and tie. I've actually been to lodge meetings, degree nights. One guy was actually in shorts, and I was like, that's going too far. We are much more casual here in the US. For stated meetings, we wear tuxedos. The officers wear tuxedos. Sideliners wear coat and tie. It could be a coat and tie. It doesn't have to be a suit now. It could be sport coat and tie. I'm sure that's similarity with y'all. That's not too alien a concept. And visitors may show up in a polo or a collared shirt. It's rare someone shows up in a t-shirt. I've seen someone show up very casual for a degree night, and I got into a lively discussion online with about dressing for lodge. My position being, you're supposed to respect your lodge and show your appreciation for masonry and show it due deference by dressing up. And some people took the point of, as long as the guy shows up, I'd rather him be there than not be dressed. But it's like, well, if you don't have respect and decorum for the lodge, what are you saying? So that's what it was. But I did posit the idea is I'd rather see us dress up for a degree night and be casual for a stated than the other way around. But we have had Hawaiian shirt nights. We've had, like lodge polo night. We have lodge polos and lodge shirts where you all seem to have more lodge ties. And if you wear the lodge shirt, it's much like this, but it'd be like solid blue and have like the lodge logo or a square and compass over the pocket and all. Go, Alistair, if you're ready to walk the carpet for us here.
Okay. Right, okay, let me just get I've got this on a cradle, that's why. Right, okay, so this is the provincial tie of my province.
Okay.
It's got the logo on it.
So you're expected to buy that, right? You're not, you're not giving
it.
Okay.
For, I don't necessarily normally wear them for a lot of lodge meetings because most of mine are dinner jacket lodges, but if I was going to a lodge which wasn't a dinner jacket lodge, I'd wear that. This is a craft lodge tie, which is I can wear anywhere in the country.
Right.
That's in England and Wales. I've worn that in Scotland. This one we only wear in November because of the Armistice and Remembrance Day.
Right.
This is a black one. So and this is the most recent edition, which is probably you won't see many of, which I had to order online. This is the LGBTQ one. And God, let me just go into my wardrobe. Right, that's what's got. Yeah, that's Katie. That's Malta, and
right.
This one you won't see very often. Thomas of Akon, which is a knightly degree. That is, if you notice the pearl shell, that is to do with Santiago de Compostela, because people go to Santiago de Compostela on pilgrimage, and then the tree from the beach. And if I can find it, that's my KT stuff, and in here should be my KT. I have a KT card. a minute. I generally try to keep everything together, otherwise it gets a mess. Beautifully turned out. We are. This is a KT tie for my area, hence the badge.
Okay.
I also have somewhere, I'm not sure where, I do have a red tie which states which I can wear to any other KT event.
Well, now, okay, we don't have to see every single tie you own, but I appreciate your due diligence, Brother Alistair. That's very cool. So let me ask a question then. Typically, you would be expected to buy, obviously you're not going to be issued a tie, maybe, or unless your lodge gives you one when you join or something, but how much would you pay for one of those ties, and are they silk ties? Or
that's
the point.
They're usually about 20, 25 quid, something like that.
And that's compared to if you just went and bought a tie in the store, would that be typical, or is that more or less? Or
the craft ties are a bit cheaper because they're not silk.
Right.
You can get them from Letchworth online, and it's standard. But they are, again, it's one of those things. I will sometimes as well give things as gifts. So, for instance, I tell you what I also do as well. Give it a moment. Right. What I do, you probably heard this, God knows how many times. Let me just find out actually here they are.
It's also worth saying that the ties vary from province to province and price-wise from province to province as well.
Okay. Well, I'm just trying to get like a ballpark. If it's like, if I went and bought one at a store that's roughly the same as you buy from the lodge. Or...
From a store, you could probably get the tie for about 5 to 6 quid if it's cheap. If you want good silk, then obviously it's around about 15, 20.
Okay. And if you buy one from the lodge, you're paying what? If you buy your provincial tie, it's...
Mine was 12.
Okay. So it's not unreasonable. It's not like a huge moneymaker. It's more of a, everyone should have one. Okay. I think my my Scottish Rite has a, Valley has a tie, and I don't remember what I paid for it, but it wasn't any more than I pay for a black tie anywhere, but it's got embroidered on the Valley. It's got the eagle with the 2 heads and it says Norfolk Valley.
Brother Chris.
Yes. Go ahead.
Maybe the good question is about aprons. Do you buy them?
Oh,
do you get them? That might be interesting.
I would like to hear that. Yes. What do you all? Well, go ahead.
We buy them. The prices vary. Sorry, the entered apprentice, you just get given it the lodge, and you just hand it back at the end of each night. Same with the fellow craft. You get given it the lodge at the end of the night. You give it back. Master Mason, you have to buy. How much depends on what it is. If you go for the full working sheepskin thing, then it costs about 70, 80 quid. If you're a cheapskate like me and go for the plastic one, then it costs about 30 quid.
Okay, and then you're expected to wear that apron at lodge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say though, a lot of lodges, what they'll do, and a lot of provinces are now doing, is they will, both at lodge level and also at provincial level, they'll encourage recycling of aprons. So if some promoter goes into the chair, they'll get a new apron, and then they're all one to the lodge, and the lodge will then sell that for a small fee to somebody else who will then.
So just to clarify that, so as a Master Mason, you're expected to buy an apron to wear in lodge, and it's the name of your lodge, or is it just? I mean,
no, it's just a plain apron.
Just a plain
occasionally
apron.
You get them with a roundel in the middle saying the name of the lodge, but majority of the time it's just a plain blue and white apron.
Now, by contrast, here
I'm moving to the questions.
Go ahead, Boris.
So what happens if you are going for the chair? Are you buying a new apron? That's number one. And after that, as IPM, do you get immediate past master jewel? Are you buying it? Are you getting it from your lodge?
In some lodges, it's perpetual, so the jewel will just be passed on. In others, you would buy it.
And you only get to wear it that year?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a good question. All right, Alistair, let me see if I can
pin
him. Oh, there we go. I'm still figuring this out. Okay, so now that is, I had a wonderful discussion on these. That is a member's apron. That is not a past master's apron, because the past master has
It's a Master Mason's apron.
What is the little upside down T called that a past master wears? Those little ups instead of the rosettes. Yeah, it's the under the T. upside down T. What is that called?
There you go. Bert's actually doing one at the moment.
It should be tau.
What is it? It's a tau?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
You see mine?
Yes, there we are. Thank you, Bert. Yes, we had a lively discussion on one chat. I think Brian was part of that, where someone had I'll explain. Someone had a cartoon of a young man saying, there are only 3 degrees of masonry, but now you have 33? Or something about why are there 33 degrees? And it had obviously a past master talking to him, chiding him, saying, the 33 degrees are for the people who can't understand the first 3 degrees. But he's wearing what I think is a past master's apron. And I incorrectly said, well, that looks like a Royal Arch apron. Why is someone in Royal Arch talking about the 33 degrees of Scottish Rite? And everybody got mad at me for not being intimately familiar with the past master's apron in England. It's like, I'm not English. What you saw there in blue as a past master, it's red and it has the triple taus. The guy in the cartoon was wearing a red one with that means red triple taus. Not silver, but red. And I showed a picture of a Royal Arch apron, which looks almost the same as what the guy was wearing. And as a American Mason, I would see that as, why is a Royal Arch Mason talking about Scottish Rite? But everybody got really mad at me for not knowing why what a British, an English past master's apron looked like. But yes, on closer inspection, it had the little things hanging down and the 3 little red T's. So clearly it was a past master's apron, not a sovereign inspector's, whatever someone's a sovereign something apron. Somebody said no, because that had silver or the whatever.
The apron looked rather similar to a provincial steward's past master.
Provincial steward, that's what it was. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, a footing stone, Brother Donald McAndrews has commented several times in chat, and he hasn't spoken yet. And he's one of the guys I couldn't respond to all of his messages, but he says the upside down T is a footing stone because the past masters are the foundation of the lodge. In my lodge, it's common here when you introduce all the past masters, like at the annual, you get them all come up to the east, we introduce them all. And we refer to the past masters as the backbone of the lodge. And I like to quip, and that's why we have scoliosis. But anyway, because we curve. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So apron, so as a man, just to go back on topic here, you have to buy an apron as a master mason, and then once you become master, you're going to be issued one, or you have to buy your master's apron?
Buy it.
You buy it.
And
okay.
It goes further.
Okay. Now in Virginia, which I think is typical, we have a box of white aprons, or sometimes white aprons with a little blue border. Everybody who shows up, they're cloth. They're decent cloth. Like, I don't know, like heavy cloth, heavier than a t-shirt, but like heavy cloth. Everyone just grabs an apron out of the box and puts it on to go to the meeting. You do not buy an apron until you're a past master, and then your lodge will give you a past master's apron. And since we're doing show and tell, I'm going to go ahead and, since we're all doing show and tell here,
again,
this is my apron case. And this is my past master's apron. Hang on, I'm going to turn off, if you'll bear with me. I have to turn off my background or you can't see it. Okay. Here is my past master's apron that was given to me by my mother lodge, Ocean View, or Charles D. Morton, when I was master in 1996. When I was master of Ocean View, who I fill it with later, I had the 2012 added on the flap. So I didn't want to buy another past master's apron because I already had one. But I was given, I didn't want anyone to buy me one. So I was issued one by my lodge, and that is typical. If you're a past master, you're given a past master's apron to wear, and only past masters bother. Now, if you're a district deputy or a DEO or a DI, they have all sorts of other aprons. If you're a past grand officer, you get an apron to wear. You're issued one as part of your whatever rank you receive. You never buy one. And if you're the master of my lodge, what they have gone to now is they give you a master's apron that has the square and it's a flap that's on the front that's leather. And during the year you're master, you're expected to wear that apron when you visit other lodges. Once you're out of office, it's like on Velcro, you take out the flap and you have your past master's apron that you wear from that time forward. I didn't get one of those because I already had one, but.
Let's say that in some instances, lodges do have a perpetual apron as well. So the past master would use it, but he would have to buy one to go anywhere once he becomes a past master.
Okay. Yes. All right. That's interesting. And do you typically put the year on there, or you just have?
No.
Okay.
No.
That's what's common here is we put the year.
Some of these aprons will have been passed around, have several owners. So once you get provincial grand rank, which is usually after about 7 years, you get a different. You have to buy a new apron, which is a blue color blue. That's yep. And the thing is, if you bought John Provincial Grand Steward, you wear a red one. So people may not necessarily hang on to that. The original Lodge Masters aprons, WM's apron for a while because actually they won't need it. So it might have several owners. That's why it won't have a date on it. You could have numerous owners, for instance, throughout its lifetimes. In theory, whenever it's for 7 or 8 years, or even less.
So, do you ever have, like, do any of your lodges have guest aprons if someone shows up, or someone forgets their apron for some reason? Or
yes,
is that not allowed? Okay.
If speaking my own thing, most lodges will have like a pile of entered apprentices and fellow crafts aprons. Usually, not many, maybe 1 or 2 master masons aprons, and some also as well. Local rural arts chapters will have them as well as site spares. But again, you just borrow them. But worst scenario, if we're out of it, you'll have. Let's say as a tiler, I would give you my master mason's apron, or I would, if let's say you're entered apprentice and we were all out of entered apprentice aprons, I'd flip a fellow craft aprons around.
Okay. All right. Now, I did have a couple more questions I want to try and get through before we end here. We're at 12 o'clock, which is fine, but we're 2 hours into this, and this is great because we got a lot of discussion.
17.
Let's see who's next. Boris. Do you have, when your lodge meets, do you have degree nights just for degrees, or do you have set meetings, or how does that work?
Well, basically, we are having the reason for the meeting, be it initiation or raising or whatever. Mm-hmm. But the value of our ritual is that you start at the first degree, go up, do your stuff, and you can go down. So people can be on that night together, at least at some part of.
Well, let me start with this.
That is what you are aiming at.
Do you have stated meetings? Like, do you have to meet at a certain time every month, or do you not meet every month?
Okay, we have fixed 4 times per year meeting.
Okay.
And it's given by the Grand Lodge. I'm talking now not about my Serbian English-speaking lodge that uses emulation, but rather Metropolitan Grand Lodge that have 4 slots, and we cannot deviate from that. We have to ask for dispensation if we want.
You're required to meet 4 times a year, but you can meet as often as you want for degree work in addition to that, or?
Well, it would be normally lodges of instruction.
Okay, lodges of instruction, which is what? That's like like you practice the ritual, or you actually confer the degrees?
Yes. For example, I managed to miss yesterday's meeting in London, and brethren were together before that because it was, I think, passing, and they were having lodges of instruction weeks before that.
Okay.
Trying to do the floor work, trying to do, the proper ritual, as it should be.
But that's basically a practice. It's a school. It's not. Do you actually open and close the meeting, or you just?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you open the meeting, just so I'm clear, you open the meeting like you normally would, and then you have basically practiced the degree work, whatever you're going to practice, and then close the meeting. Okay.
Right.
You said the important bit there, whatever you're going to practice. In some lodges of instruction, everyone would move up a level.
Right.
So the junior warden becomes the senior warden.
Right. So it's typical then, even now, Boris, you're actually not in are you not in England, or are you in? You said you're in Serbia?
I do not live in England right now, but
Okay.
I'm in English lodge as well.
It's an English lodge in Serbia. Okay.
No. Sorry,
What?
no. I'm London Freemason. So my lodge is called Wayner Ward. We meet at Parkmaster Mason Hall, and this is why I'm here. But we have also English-speaking lodge in Serbia, which is under Grand Lodge of Serbia. We are using the same ritual. So we are pretty much on the same.
So, Brian, it's typical then your lodge meets 4 times a year? That's typical for English lodges?
No, my lodge meets 12 times a year.
Okay. Well, again, Virginia, we have our 12. We have 12 stateds, right? We are required to meet. Ocean View meets on the second Friday of every month. That's in our bylaws. So I assume you have something like bylaws, I guess.
Yes, we do.
When your meetings are and when your dues and all. So
Yeah.
According to our bylaws, we must meet on the second Friday of every month. At the stated meeting, we can only vote on candidates and pay bills and such like that at the stateds. You typically wouldn't do degree work on a stated night. I know of lodges that did because they really couldn't afford the rent, and they were paying for each meeting, so they do degree work on their stateds. But we can call for a meeting, and typically we meet on a Friday because our stated's on a Friday. Every lodge stays in their lane in our district, and they only do degree night. They do degree work the same night that they meet for their stateds, so people can visit other lodges. So we'd meet on the first Friday or the third Friday to do an entered apprentice or a fellowcraft, even a raising. But we can only do certain things at the stateds. So is that the case, or can you have called meetings, or do you only meet on your stated night?
Our meetings are what you would call, I guess, stated night. We do it on one night. We get a summoning us to our lodge to do the meeting.
Right.
In that meeting, we can do whatever we want. So we can raise someone, pay bills, ballot for someone. It is a meeting, and it's everything in it.
So like your lodge meets, what's your stated meeting? What day of the month is it?
Our lodge meets on a Tuesday, every second Tuesday of the month.
Right. So you would only meet on the second Tuesday. You cannot have called meetings.
No.
But you can have a lodge of instruction that night?
Yeah, and no, lodge of instruction is a separate night. That would be a separate time completely. Also, although we can't have called meetings, we can have management meetings, if you like, where we can discuss.
Those aren't formal. That you don't open and close. You just
they're completely informal,
like a committee meeting.
We even been known as showing up wearing jeans to those.
What? The horror.
Yeah, okay. I know. It's terrible, isn't it?
So your dress code is the same then for every meeting, because your February meeting might be, you're going to do a fellowcraft. And then your March meeting might have a guest speaker or something, but you could pay bills and vote on petitions at every meeting.
Yes.
Okay. So, but you only meet, that's interesting. Yeah. So like I said, we're allowed to have as many called meetings during the year as we see fit. Some lodges are meeting pretty much every night, like every Friday, they're meeting because they have so many candidates. So they just go one after the other. But again, we cannot conduct any business at our called communications. We show up and we open on, say, the entered apprentice degree. We show up for our meeting, we open on the entered apprentice degree, we confer the entered apprentice degree, we close, and we go home. Our stateds have to be on the Master Mason's degree. That was my next question. I'll go to Neil's gone. Alistair, do you have, at your stated meetings, do you have to open on a certain degree?
Normally, put it in perspective, if we're doing a lodge of instruction, regardless of if it's a rehearsal, a lodge of instruction, or a actual degree night, which are like what we would call regular lodge night. Regular lodge nights are when we actually do confer the degrees. That's what we're regular lodge. The other lodge of instruction and the rehearsal, they basically normally, dress code is normally informal. There's no meal or anything like that. It's literally just turn up, do what you do, bugger off. But degree night, but regardless of whichever one in England, normally, if let's say the master would stand up and said, right, help me to open the lodge, it would always be first degree first, regardless of whether we're going to do an apprentice. It would always be in that degree, and then boom, you do a few bits and pieces, go into, and then let's say we were doing, I don't know, let's say a third, you'd have to go into the second, then the third, you'd go up into the 2 degrees,
Right.
2 more degrees, get the third. However, you'd not in each degree, before you open that, you'd kick out the Enter Apprentice or the Fellow Crafts. If let's say you're doing a Master Mason's degree, you kick out the Enter Fellow Crafts at the appropriate time. If it's everyone stays apart from that's so effectively we always open the first, so it means everyone gets a chance to open.
Right. So if I'm an entered apprentice in your lodge, I can attend every one of your stateds.
Yes.
Yes.
And at least state unless you're doing a fellow craft or a Master Mason's degree, I can attend the whole meeting. Okay. In Virginia, it's the opposite, and I think at one time we were like that. Our stateds must be on the Master Mason's degree. We cannot vote on candidates. We have to open in the Master Mason's degree for our stateds. We can only vote on petitions at our stateds. So only Master Masons can vote. So if I'm an entered apprentice, am I paying dues in your lodge from the time I'm an entered apprentice?
From the moment you join, you have to pay dues. Okay. You can vote. You do the whole effectively. You may be a Master Mason, but as soon as you become an entered apprentice, your status is the same as everyone else in terms of your voting rights and what fees you owe.
Can I hold office if I'm not like a fellow craft or Master Mason?
You can, basically, but however you can. But if let's say we're doing a fellow craft degree and you're an apprentice, you get kicked out and somebody else would take that role. So essentially, if you go down, so it's like a good example. Let's say I was in a guard, which it's not uncommon to see a junior brother do that.
Right.
He would let's say in there, let's say he was an apprentice. However, once we were about to go in the second, he would get kicked out, and then it would be someone else to take his place. And as soon as we're back, he would go back into his own slot.
Okay.
So,
well, we are different in that regard. You can't, until you're a Master Mason in Virginia, at least, you don't get to attend the stateds. You don't get to ballot on petitions. You can turn in a petition, but you can't vote on one. You can't. You don't pay dues. You can be an entered apprentice fellow craft for a couple of years. You don't pay any dues, but you belong to that lodge until you're a Master Mason. If you were to die as an entered apprentice, you wouldn't get Masonic rights. You're not allowed to wear rings. You're not allowed to. There's several other. You don't have. You can't freely visit other lodges. Like say we have an entered apprentice who's going through the catechism. We would take him with one or more Master Masons would take him to another lodge that was meeting to confer an entered apprentice. He could attend that meeting and watch to help him learn his catechism, but he can't on his own just go show up somewhere. Once you're a Master Mason, you have full visitation rights. You can go visit any lodge you want. You don't need a chaperone, as it were. So it is different how we do things. Boris, go ahead.
Sorry, actually, you described what is happening being with one leg on UK soil and the other on continent. You are explaining continental masonry. This is what is usual in Germany, Austria, Serbia. So the same approach as you are having over there. But UK approach is a little bit different, and there are not, I would say, not more appropriate or more rightful approaches. But
it is what they do. Yeah. There's an argument on either end. I definitely would think, my opinion, if I'm paying dues, I should be able to do everything everybody else does.
Yeah.
You know, I should have all the full rights and benefits. If I'm not paying dues, I shouldn't argue that I have those rights.
In Serbia, you are paying for the entered apprentice, and you are having taxes when you are joining the masonry. But you are not allowed to travel alone, apart with your proposer and stuff like that. So it's different, definitely.
Yeah, very good. Okay. And Boris, while we got you, we'll ask you: is there more volume of sacred law on the altar at your meetings?
Very good question. In my lodge in Belgrade, English-speaking lodge, there is. In my UK lodge, there is not.
There's just one, just the Bible. Yeah. Okay, so you do attend lodges where they have more than one. They have other holy books on the altar. And if a brother's being obligated, he say a Muslim joins your lodge and he wants to give his obligation on the Quran, you would he would either bring a Quran or you provide one for him?
Depends on the lodge, but usually, but you would normally, you would make your obligation on the following the sacred law of your faith or belief. But that's essentially, you could get like a university scheme lodge might have a load of students, and they will have, you could have a geet next to a Quran, next to a Torah. You make sure the trick of it is basically making sure the right person puts the right hand on the right lodge, on the right following the sacred law. But other than that, it's basically you know, it's make sure it's liable. It's a solemn oath with whoever you believe in upstairs.
Absolutely. So, okay, so let's go back to Boris.
Yes, this is very good. I'm showing emulation ritual, and even at the level of the book itself, it says, for example, that you do not have to kneel if your faith is having a problem with that. So you can stay covered, stay uncovered. So it goes deeper than just having a volume of sacred laws of a different kind in front of you. So it's very interesting, and that is unique for emulation and similar rituals, tailors and others.
Okay. There is also actually a guidance leaflet about what religions use what books and how you treat them and how you change your ritual, which you can get access to just to sort of keep you going.
A lot of it stems back from colonial era when Masonry was originally a Christian thing, but when they wanted other people to be able to join, they had to change it slightly to obviously accommodate that. So that's why you'll get to, while there's a strong Christian element, there is also, they just de-Christianized it a wee bit so that they could get all these people from different faiths to be able to join. That's something I find not that I've been rude, but there are some American Masons who can't seem to grasp this, that actually there are Masons who are not from the same faith group as themselves, who are members. And that's the thing, is like, for me, it's like, okay, fine. I've seen Muslims do second degrees. I've seen Hindus do second degree. Nobody cares. It's like, as long as you put on this, as long as you're saying your oath on the right for following sacred law, that's all we care about. So,
absolutely. All right. Brian, where are the 3 candles around the altar? Or are they around the altar?
No, they're not. There's one at the master's desk, one at the senior warden, and one at the junior warden.
Interesting. Is that true for all of y'all?
Yeah, same here.
Okay. In Virginia, there's some variance as to where they're put, but basically all 3 of the lesser lights are around the altar. And typically it's east, west, and if you're looking at the altar, it's if I'm looking at the altar, if I'm the candidate, it's upper right or upper left, lower left, upper right. Some lodges, it's lower right. There's always 2 on the north and 1 in the south. Sometimes it's centered. I've been to lodges where they have all 3 on the right. If you're looking at the altar, they're all 3 clustered together in a triangle, but they're all in proximity around the altar.
We don't have altars.
Huh?
Do you have your altar in the center of the building?
The altar is in the center of the room, yes. And you all don't have altars?
No.
We have the worshipful master's pedestal. So the volume of sacred law is on the worshipful master's pedestal. There is no altar in the center of the building.
Well, so a candidate then, they're in the east when they get their obligation?
Yeah, they kneel in front of the worshipful master.
Wow. Yeah, see, I just stumbled across it. Again, something that I take as a given. Our altars are in the middle. As if I had to make that clear, the candidate circles around the room and eventually ends up at the altar for his obligation, but he kneels at the altar in the center of the room. Wow. So for you at the master,
that is the way it is, because I've visited a lot of lodges under the Grand Lodge of Nigeria, Scottish, So that is the way their own lodges are structured. But for the English Constitution, there's no altar at the center of the building. Right. We have the VSL and the square and compass on it, on the worshipful master's pedestal.
Interesting. See, go ahead, Boris.
And very interesting fact. I find that very amusing. volume of sacred law should be turned so that worshipful master can read it rather than the candidate. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Right. Whereas for us, it's in the center. Well, it's facing the candidate because he's kneeling. So if you were to stand at the altar, you can read it. And then but that's another big thing in Virginia. We constantly chide people. You are not allowed, unless the ritual calls for it, you are not allowed to pass between the master and the Bible when the Bible is open. But there's certain ritual where if you're conducting a candidate, for example, the senior deacon is escorting him around the room. So he's walking basically along the edges of the chairs and at the foot of the east.
Carrying
and the chairs.
lodge.
Yeah, he's circumambulating the lodge. So the senior deacon is allowed to pass between the master. If my nose is the altar and the master's up here at the top, the senior deacon is required to pass in front of the master and the altar, but he's required to by the ritual, nobody else. So if you get called up to the east, like if you're sitting here and then they call you up to the east, you go around the altar, you get up to the master and you talk to him, you're not allowed to cut back to your chair. You have to walk down south, walk around the altar and go back to your chair. You're not allowed to get between the master and the altar at any time unless the ritual calls for it. Not an issue if the altar is up there in the east.
In United Grand Lodge of England, it's the same, because the volume of sacred law is just in front of the worshipful master, so nobody can pass between them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't. It'd be very difficult to. Okay, one more question. Where, we'll go to Alistair here. Where is the letter G in your lodge?
Center of the lodge. It's normally, if you imagine, at the center, in the middle of you've got the worship master, junior deacon, senior warden, the two wardens. Then, but in the middle of the squared pavement, usually, almost on the ceiling, there is normally a G sign, which is dangling down from the ceiling.
Your G is directly above where we would put the altar.
Yeah, it's because so yeah.
The only reason I know that is and Cameron's already left, but Cameron Adamson is our regular attendee. He talks about Ontario. He talks about the lodges in his building in Windsor. We had a great talk where he gave us a tour of the Windsor Masonic Temple, and he showed one of the lodge rooms. I'm like, hold on, why is there a G in the middle of the room? Because in Virginia, and actually I think if I duck down, you can see it behind me, the G is in the east above the master. My hair is blocking it. The G is directly above the master in the east. And the ritual more than once refers to the G suspended in the east above the master's chair. And
in English ritual, it's in the second degree, it letters his peculiar attention is drawn to letter G, the great architect's universe, and everything. But that's in the center of the building. That's in English, and it's obviously you can see all my similar Constitution brothers are smiling. That's literally that's second degree. That's like standard thing, and everyone, the wardens clamp their things that their wands down. Everyone claps,
right?
And wherever you go, you can there's always a G on the ceiling in English Constitution lodges,
right? And that's like I said. That's why I noticed it in the picture, and I was like dumbstruck, like what is the G doing there? And I wouldn't have known. That's not something I would have thought to ask. Being different. So I try and come up with clever questions here, because what you take is perfectly normal. I look and say, what? You're like wearing the aprons around your head or something. Uchenna is that
wear different aprons entirely from us. They all literally they're a smorgasbord of colours. We're quite dull. The Scots have got some really cool aprons. They've got some really.
Is that the same for you all? The G is in the center of the building, the center of the room? I say building, I should say room.
Well, I live in Abuja, and in Abuja here, we do not have a Masonic hall. So we meet in a hotel. There's a hall there that we've met in for several years now. So physically, there is no G anywhere hanging.
Okay.
But I also remember that the last line in the tracing board lecture, second degree, talks about a G in the center of the building.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I probably have. I have another page of questions. I never got. Oh wow. Okay. I didn't get to, well, I have a whole other page we didn't get to, but this is a wonderful talk, but it is 12:26 here in the East Coast. So I think I've got a little long. We're down to 9 people. I don't want to keep going. I love it. I'm enjoying the heck out of this, and I'll go all day, but people are dropping off left and right. So I think it's only fair we wrap it up. We may have to have a second one because I didn't even get to answer some of the fun questions. You do have alcohol. You covered on that briefly, but so maybe we'll do another one of these. I don't know, but this was great fun. Let me just go around to each panel. I'm going to ask you one last question. What is the biggest difference between American and English masonry? Brian?
That's a hard one. You can, I guess, sort of American, I look on American and the Freemasonry as sort of a distant cousin.
Okay.
You can see similarities, but there's a hell of a lot that's different.
Okay. And we've uncovered that today.
Americans seem to be more, I was supposed to say the word strict, but that's not it. They don't seem to be so laid back with their Freemasonry as the British are.
You're saying we're not as laid back?
No, you're not. I mean, okay, so uniform wise and the rest of it, yeah. But for instance, women Freemasons, which is one you didn't touch. The lodges in the UK, some of them are shared with women Freemasons. The university lodges and United Grand Lodge of England actually work together with women Masons to get. So, I mean,
that's a whole nother ball of wax. But you're not
exactly. But that's a hell of a difference.
But you're not okay. You're not. You don't recognize them, but they meet in the same building. Is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I got to interject with a side note here. I went to Italy in and I mentioned the grand, I'm visiting Harry S. Truman Lodge in Italy in 95. Okay. I attended lodge at Harry S. Truman. The lodge owned the building. They had a shrine club that met there regularly, but almost all the members were Shriners. They rented out the building to the Prince Hall Lodge, military lodge that met there under the Grand Lodge, Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Oklahoma. So we had a number of Prince Hall Masons who met in our building. That would be unheard of here in Virginia at the same time. It wasn't until 2000 that we finally recognized the Grand Lodge, Prince Hall of Virginia, and now we recognize them. We're working to eliminate the differences, but we still two separate bodies, American, well, what we call mainstream or state lodges and Prince Hall. The idea that a Prince Hall Lodge was meeting in your building would be unthinkable here. I think that's on the level you're talking about.
Yeah.
People pretend they don't exist.
I mean, to put perspective, we've had, so Saviorgate, which is up the road from me, they have one of all the lodges are effectively tenants of that building who meet there, they're tenants. So, and one of the tenants is a woman's lodge.
Okay.
So, and you mentioned women's masonry to some Americans, no offense. It's like a red rag to a bull. But yeah, in terms of Irish, again, if you had an Irish Constitution Lodge, they would just be another tenant of the building. Essentially, they'd be able to visit. The women wouldn't be able to visit you in open lodge, but they would. But the only time they would visit you would be if, let's say, you call the lodge off, and then they'd come in, listen to a lecture, and then leave before you reopened it, before you called back on again. That'd be the only time, and vice versa with us and the women, essentially. But you would not. We don't officially. We wouldn't. I wouldn't go into a woman's lodge and vice versa with my apron on and sit in open lodge with them. We're not co-masons. Just to clarify that point.
You can't visit. You can't affiliate. You can't. Yeah.
No, but we can still go to the festive boards. They can still come to our lectures. We can go to their lectures, providing the lodge is knocked off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alistair, then your same question. What do you think is the biggest difference between American and English lodges?
Attitude. I mean, no offense. I've had a lot. I mean, I wore a rainbow mask on because the other week to a lodge, and basically I was accused. My own lodge, who know I'm openly gay, don't give it. Well, that's my other lodge. Didn't give a shit. They're like, yeah, you're wearing a mask. That's great. We need that because we're doing a third degree and we had elderly members. So yeah, but you got some Americans who just they bring their politics into it. They think it's my own law, like, I don't care. It's like, yeah, have at it. It's a mask. I don't care. And even to the point where I, with my permission of my provincial Grand Lodge, I had a rainbow flag made up with a provincial crest on it, so I could effectively represent my provincial Grand Lodge at our Pride events. So the route to do was what we used to do, which is to walk through the streets. But essentially, you get, I'd say, some people more conservative, and also, for instance, firearms. Over here, you wouldn't think about carrying a firearm to a lodge meeting. Wouldn't happen. Do it, you'd be in serious bother.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And I think you're touching on more of a cultural difference overall.
Yeah, there's
the
different
lodge,
totally,
but masonry kind of reflects the culture sometimes.
Yeah, essentially, it's much more.
I will say this: in Ocean View Lodge, you would be welcome as a gay mason packing a firearm. You'd be perfectly welcome. So we've met both your criteria, or maybe only one of your criteria. I don't know.
It's put in perspective. I mean, I've had quite angry arguments with American Masons who demand the right to carry a firearm. I'm like, well, sorry, mate. If I was initiating you, you'd have to leave that thing outside the door. And also, I'd be worried about the damn thing going off. If you sat down, somebody sits wrong, the damn thing went off and put a bullet through somebody, and also damaging the furniture.
Also, you're the best of all metals, so you can't have a gun in the lodge, even if you want to.
You're a candidate. I'm only speaking of regular members. All right, Uchenna, what do you think is the biggest difference between American Masonry and English Masonry?
Well, I don't know. Initially, I had thought that American Masonry was more relaxed. But on the second thought, well, I think there are some, for instance, I saw somebody make a post on Facebook that he got raised to the 3rd degree on a certain date, and a month later he was made a 30-degree Mason, and I got confused. How did that happen? Because from what I know of the UGLE, you need to become join the Royal Arch first, get to the 18th degree before you talk about the 30th degree. But this brother is talking about getting to the 30th degree after being raised within 1 month. So I really got confused as to how that works. So I had this impression that American Masonry is more relaxed, and perhaps English Masonry is more rigid.
I think in some ways you are,
from our
in some
discussion,
ways we are. You could make the argument both ways about who's more relaxed. Obviously, we're more relaxed in dress.
Yeah.
The Scottish Rite, we talked about the different appendant bodies earlier. We have an unfortunate thing that I'm very much opposed to here, which is we have our one-day conferrals, because there seems to be a rush to get people into the shrine. And by the way, I don't think you have the shrine at all in England. You could have a one-day conferral of the 3 degrees. And this is a whole, I'm touching on things that could be a whole discussion in themselves. I realize that I'm not trying to gloss over, but I don't want to get down the rabbit hole. We've been here long enough already. You could get the 3 degrees in the Blue Lodge, get the 5 degrees in the Scottish Rite, and get the shrine ceremonial on Sunday. So in a weekend, you could go from being a profane to being a Shriner. That was back when Scottish Rite was a requirement to be in the shrine. In here in Virginia, aside from the one-day conferrals that I'm totally opposed to, you join the Scottish Rite, you get them over the course of like 4 days, or sometimes 2 days over a weekend. So you join, but typically we encourage you not to join the Scottish Rite or anything else till you've been in at least a year. But you get your 32nd degree in a long weekend with the Scottish Rite. So that's typical. If you join the Scottish Rite, you get all the degrees in 1 weekend. And we're trying to maybe change that, because I think you get too much and you can't absorb it. But that's more of an appendant body thing than a Blue Lodge thing.
I will never reach the 30th degree. Never.
No, not
too many.
See, and that's another. I think we should have a talk on just the appendant bodies one meeting. I think that'd be a lot of fun to delve into. Okay, Boris, last question to you. Same question. What's the biggest difference in American and
I have this privilege of not being British, yet exposed to the British style of Freemasonry.
Yes.
And being able to travel. My experience with the US kind of Masonry ended up with one New York lodge, and I can have some ideas. I would say attitude and how tradition is understood from the perspective of a typical British Mason, be it metropolitan or provincial or whatever.
Right.
And this is something that I can see because I'm just reminding you in Serbia, and I understand this continental style, which is more close in some respect to US.
I think so, yes.
It gives a interesting blend of some sort of, how should I put it, royal background of Freemasonry in United Kingdom. Even monarchs themselves have been promoters of our art. But yet again, it's really open, but it's more, not strict, not rigid, strict more. So I would say that is the difference.
So when you say there's a difference in attitude, what do you like? Give an example of the difference in attitude then. We're more casual, more laid back?
Towards, I would not go that far to say laid back, but definitely when we are talking about ritual, it's more strict in the UK.
Okay.
There is a perfect British humor around. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. But, when it comes to ritual, it's tic-tac. No improvisation, and that is what I really like.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Well, that's going back to an earlier comment I said about the traditional observance lodges. When I talk about observant lodges, several of my British brothers would say, well, that's just masonry. It's kind of like you're finally getting back to doing it. I do agree. I think in America, from what I've observed, it's much, for a lot of Masons, it's a social organization. It's a club, much more than a serious thing that is trying to delve into the deeper mysteries of the universe. It's more of it's a social thing. And some only treat it as a social thing, which I have a big problem with. Okay, I'm going to need to wrap it up. It is almost 12. It is 12:38. I appreciate those who stuck around. We're down to 9. Thank you, all of my panelists. Thank you, everyone, for participating. I'm going to give you I want to promote our next meeting, but if anyone has any parting shots, you're more than welcome. We didn't get through all of the questions, unfortunately. So our next meeting is on Saturday, January 29th at 10 a.m. It's called Creating Sacred Spaces. And Worshipful Randy Sanders will be our guest speaker. This presentation gives consideration into the who, what, where, when, why, and how of sacred spaces. We explore what a sacred space means to you and begin to explore ways to create your own sacred spaces inside and outside of the lodge. Those of you who are longtime attendees, like Brian, will remember, I brought it up in one meeting, is how can we take this thing we have, this online virtual meeting we have as a regular occurrence with my brothers there in England and Scotland and Ireland and even Serbia and other Eastern Europe countries and some Americans as well. But how do we take this to the next level? We're touching on things that are so, to me, it's the esoterica of Masonry that we never seem to really get into enough of. That's why I got into the research lodges, to get more into this in-depth stuff. We talked about alchemy. We talk about other things in Masonry, and how can we raise the level of what we're doing here to be more than just an online meeting where you hear a speaker. And so Brother Sanders talking about sacred spaces, that touches on something I talked about before. I'll have to go back and rewatch that video and see what I said then, because it's like, that's where I want to go. I want us to be at a level above, what you normally get when you go to one of these Zoom meetings and you watch the speaker and that was fun and you're done. I want to create more, a brotherhood, a fraternity among us that may never get together in person, but have a connection here that you don't have, that you only can get in like the Blue Lodge normally, where you're meeting with brothers in person all the time and you really get to know each other. Can we elevate to another level? That's kind of my goal. So I'm really glad he's going to be here. That's going to be in 2 weeks on the 29th. And we're going to keep doing this every 2 weeks and see how that goes. I don't know if we'll ever go back to a weekly, but if attendance gets really good, we might consider going back to weekly. But I mainly want to make sure I have good topics and I have enough speakers to get people to attend. So anybody got anything they want to say before we sign off? I do appreciate you all coming out and singing with us.
Thanks. Have a good day. It's 20 to 5 in the evening here.
Yes.
So I'll bid you good night. Thanks very much.
Good night. As said,
Right. Thanks, everybody.
Be healthy, be safe.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Chris, I have something to add.
Please.
Thank you.
Bye.
You're most welcome. I'm glad to offer this. You all make it happen. Brian, thank you as
All the
always.
best.
My
Stay
Ed
healthy.
McMahon.
Very welcome. See you later.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Y'all take care.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.